Okay, let's imagine something for a second. It's the beginning of the year, and suddenly, the United States does something huge, a direct military intervention in Venezuela. Now, this isn't just another round of sanctions or some diplomatic wrist slap. We're talking hard power, and it's sending massive shockwaves through the world of geopolitics and, of course, energy.
So that brings us to the billion-dollar question, right? Why would this even happen? What are the real reasons behind a move this dramatic? There's always the official story, but as we're about to see, the real answer is probably buried deep underground.
All right, here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at the shocking move itself. Then, we'll dig into the official story versus the real motives. After that, we'll explore the global ripple effects, the new geopolitical chessboard this creates, what it all means for a major player like India, and we'll wrap it up with 3 key takeaways you won't want to miss.
So, first up, the event itself. Let's get a clear picture of what this shocking move would actually involve. I mean, this would be a complete break from decades of U.S. policy in Latin America.
In this scenario, we're talking about U.S. forces literally going into Venezuela, capturing President Nicolas Maduro, and flying him back to the United States. Analysts have a pretty stark name for this: direct regime decapitation. You're essentially removing a country's leader by force. It's a tactic we just haven't seen in this part of the world for a very, very long time. It would be a crystal clear signal that the time for talking is over.
Okay, so why on earth would the U.S. take such a drastic step? Well, with any big move on the world stage, you've got the official story, and then you've got what might be the real drivers humming away under the surface.
And to really get the why, you have to understand this one critical, and I mean critical, fact. Venezuela is sitting on the world's largest proven oil reserves. That's more than Saudi Arabia, more than the UAE. It is, geologically speaking, an energy superpower, even if its government is a total mess. This one fact is the key to understanding everything else.
And this is where we get 2 completely different stories. The official line from the U.S. would be all about restoring democracy, fighting narco-terrorism, drug trafficking that funds political agendas, and stopping the flow of migrants. But a lot of analysts would point to one single, much simpler driver: energy security.
The argument here is that this isn't really about politics, it's about petroleum. Think about it. You could unlock a stable supply of 2 million barrels a day. The U.S. could get the specific type of heavy crude that its Gulf Coast refineries are built for. It would also mean less reliance on OPEC+, that big oil cartel. And, well, it would open up some massive opportunities for American oil companies. It's geopolitics working for energy security. Plain and simple.
Now, an event this big, it doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It creates these massive ripple effects that touch financial markets and economies all over the world.
But here's the paradox, the really interesting twist. Despite sitting on all that oil, years of total mismanagement and sanctions mean Venezuela's actual production is tiny. We're talking just 1% of the entire global market.
And that tiny market share? That's exactly why the immediate jump in oil prices would be pretty modest, maybe from $60 to $65 a barrel. There wouldn't be a huge price shock because, frankly, global markets had already written Venezuela off. With plenty of oil in storage around the world, there's no initial panic.
But that's just the short term. The real danger here is the slow burn, this economic chain reaction. If the crisis drags on, oil prices could start to creep up and stay up. That fuels inflation. Central banks then have to raise interest rates to cool things down, and that can cause money to literally flee from developing countries. That's the real storm brewing on the horizon.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit, because this wouldn't just be a U.S. action. It will be a major move on a global chessboard, with some other very powerful players at the table. Venezuela, for all its problems, has basically become what experts call a proxy arena. Just think of it like a stage where the big powers, the US, China, Russia, compete for influence without actually going to war with each other. It's where global power is won and lost. And a move like this directly challenges America's rivals. I mean, look at China. They poured over $50 billion into Venezuela and have these long-term deals to get oil. This would throw a huge wrench in Beijing's whole energy strategy. And at the same time, it seriously undermines the interests that both Russia and Cuba have been building in the country for years.
So with all this happening halfway around the world, you might be asking, how does this affect a huge oil importing country like India?
Well, right now, India's position is surprisingly strong. Over the last decade, they've been really smart and have strategically cut their dependence on Venezuelan oil to almost nothing. Their sources are super diversified now. They're getting oil from the Middle East, Russia, Africa, the Americas, you name it.
So you get this really sharp contrast. In the short term, India is pretty much insulated, no immediate supply shock. But long term, that is a whole different ballgame. India is a massive oil importer, so it is absolutely vulnerable to a sustained rise in global oil prices. That can spark inflation and make its current account deficit worse, which just means it's spending more on imports than it's making on exports.
And here's what that actually looks like in real numbers. For every $10 increase in the price of a barrel of oil that sticks around, consumer inflation in India could go up by as much as 0.4%. That's a direct hit to the wallets of over 1 billion people.
So, after digging through the event, the motives, and all the global fallout, what does this all really mean? What are the big lessons we should be taking away from this?
I think it all boils down to 3 really powerful takeaways. First, if Venezuela teaches us anything, it's that just having tons of natural resources doesn't automatically make you rich or powerful. Second, this kind of action shows that for a superpower, energy security isn't just a business deal, it's a core strategic goal worth fighting for. And third, for a country like India that imports its energy, having a diversified strategy isn't just a good idea, it's one of its most critical national assets.
Which really leaves us with this one final question. When you look at a place like Venezuela, a country with more oil than Saudi Arabia but is basically a failed state, you just have to ask, is all that natural resource wealth truly a blessing, or can it become a geopolitical curse?